The world didn't fall into war overnight. It was slowly dragged there, step by pride, revenge, greed, and fear. The year was 1919. The cannons of the First World War had finally fallen silent, leaving behind a continent of ruins and graves. Europe had lost more than 16 million lives, and the world swore it would never happen again. Yet beneath the solemn promises of peace, the seeds of the next great war were already being planted, not in battlefields, but in conference halls, in treaties, and in the hearts of nations humiliated by defeat. The Treaty of Versailles was meant to end all wars. Instead, it ensured another one. Signed in the gilded halls of France, the treaty forced Germany, the defeated empire, to take full blame for the war. The country was stripped of its colonies, its military reduced to a token force, and, most cruelly, it was ordered to pay enormous reparations, some so large they would cripple its economy for generations. Germany lost land, pride, and hope all at once. To the victors, it was justice. To the defeated, it was humiliation. In the years that followed, the world entered what seemed to be a fragile peace. The 1920s brought jazz, invention, and dreams of progress. But under the surface, Europe was boiling. Germany was drowning in debt and despair. Inflation turned money into worthless paper. People carried banknotes in baskets just to buy bread. In Berlin and Munich, political chaos reigned. Communists and nationalists fought in the streets, governments fell one after another, and the once proud German people began to look for someone, anyone, who could restore their dignity. That someone appeared in the form of a failed artist and a decorated soldier from the Great War, Adolf Hitler. Hitler's rise was no accident. He was the voice of a broken nation promising revenge for Versailles, a rebirth of pride and a return to greatness. He offered simple answers to complex problems, and in times of chaos, that is the most seductive thing in the world. The people listened. The rich saw in him a defense against communism. The poor saw hope. The veterans saw a leader who spoke their pain. And the world, distracted, arrogant, and tired of conflict, looked away. But Germany's resentment was not the only ember left burning after the Great War. Across the world, the peace had created winners and losers, and the losers were not content. Italy, though on the victorious side, felt cheated. It had expected more land, more recognition, more respect. Out of that frustration rose Benito Mussolini, who preached the glory of Roman conquest and the destiny of Italy to rule again. Meanwhile, in Japan, the world's hunger for empire spread eastward. The Japanese Empire, once a rising industrial power, sought to dominate Asia and secure resources it believed the Western world had unfairly kept for itself. By the 1930s, the world's peace was a house of glass, and every nation was reaching for a stone. Then came the Great Depression, the invisible enemy that shattered economies and faith alike. From America to Europe to Asia, unemployment, hunger, and hopelessness spread faster than any army could march. When the world's markets collapsed, so did its belief in democracy. People turned toward leaders who promised not freedom, but order, not negotiation, but strength. In Germany, that man was Hitler. In Italy, Mussolini. In Japan, the generals. The real reason the world slid toward war was not just one man or one country. It was the collective failure of peace itself. The Western powers, still traumatized by World War I, chose appeasement over confrontation. When Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, the world condemned it with words, not actions. When Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935, the League of Nations protested, but did nothing. When Hitler reoccupied the Rhineland in 1936, violating the Treaty of Versailles, France and Britain hesitated, unwilling to fight for a cause that seemed distant. Every act of aggression was met with silence, and that silence became permission. Hitler learned the lesson quickly. The world feared another war more than it feared him. Inside Germany, he built an empire of steel and fire. He rearmed the nation in secret, rebuilt its industries, and turned propaganda into a weapon sharper than any sword. He told his people that Germany had been stabbed in the back by traitors, Jews, and foreign powers. He promised a pure and powerful Reich that would never bow again. The people cheered, not because they were evil, but because they were desperate. By 1938, Germany had risen from ashes to arrogance. Hitler annexed Austria without firing a single shot, calling it Anschluss, the unification of all German-speaking people. The Western world, fearful and divided, let it happen. "Peace for our time," British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain declared after the Munich Agreement, when he allowed Hitler to seize the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia in exchange for promises of peace. But Hitler's promises were lies, written in smoke. Behind the scenes, he was already planning more. The true spark that ignited World War II came from his obsession with expansion, a doctrine he called Lebensraum, or living space. Hitler believed that the German people needed more land to thrive, and that this land lay to the east, in Poland, Ukraine, and Russia. His vision of conquest was driven by racism and ideology. He saw Slavs as inferior, Jews as enemies, and war as destiny. He would not stop until the map of Europe was redrawn under his banner. But there was still one obstacle, the fear of a two-front war. So Hitler made a deal with his ideological opposite, Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union. In August 1939, the world watched in disbelief as Nazi Germany and Communist Russia signed a secret pact, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, agreeing to divide Eastern Europe between them. It was a deal born of cynicism and calculation, not trust, but it gave Hitler the freedom he needed to strike. On September 1, 1939, as the first light of dawn touched the fields of Poland, German tanks rolled across the border. Within hours, Polish defenses crumbled under the weight of blitzkrieg, or lightning war. The sky filled with Stuka dive bombers, the earth shook beneath panzer divisions, and the world once again found itself at war. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany. The Second World War had begun. But the real reason for the war lay deeper than Hitler's ambition. It was the collective failure of nations to learn from the First War, the arrogance of the victors, the blindness of the democracies, and the despair of the defeated. It was not a single moment, but 1,000 small choices, the signing of a treaty that punished instead of healed, the silence in the face of aggression, the fear of responsibility, and the belief that peace could be bought by feeding the wolf instead of fighting it. As the war unfolded, it became more than a conflict of armies. It became a moral reckoning for humanity. Hitler's ideology of racial supremacy led to the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews and millions of others were exterminated. Japan's hunger for empire brought war to Asia and the Pacific Islands, resulting in atrocities across China and the Pacific Islands. Italy's imperial ambitions collapsed in the sands of Africa. The entire world was engulfed in fire, not because war was inevitable, but because peace was neglected. By 1945, when the dust settled, more than 60 million people were dead. Soldiers, civilians, children, entire cities erased. The war that was supposed to end all wars had given birth to something far worse. The atomic bomb had fallen, the concentration camps had been exposed, and the map of the world was forever changed. The irony was cruel. The Second World War ended only when humanity was forced to face its own reflection and recoil in horror.
The real reason World War II happened was not just politics or economics. It was human nature, pride, revenge, fear, and the illusion of control. Nations acted like individuals driven by emotion rather than wisdom. Germany wanted revenge. Italy wanted recognition. Japan wanted dominance. Britain and France wanted peace at all costs, and America, at first, wanted distance. Each desire collided, and the result was catastrophe. In the ashes of that catastrophe, a new world was born, one divided by the Cold War, haunted by memories, and bound by the fragile promise, never again. Yet the lessons of the past remain dangerously easy to forget. The story of how World War II began is not a tale of one man's evil, but of how the world allowed that evil to rise. It is a warning written in blood and fire, that peace built on fear is no peace at all, and that silence in the face of aggression is itself a kind of surrender.
History does not repeat itself in the same words, but it rhymes, and every generation must listen to its echoes. The next great war, if it ever comes, will not begin with a single gunshot, but with the same quiet, deadly complacency that once allowed the world to burn. And so, when we ask why World War II happened, the answer is not found in the names of generals or the borders on a map. It is found in the human heart, in our endless struggle between hope and hatred, between pride and peace. The war began the moment the world stopped caring enough to prevent it.